For those of you who have never been to plenary before, Kathleen is always very generous with her time and comes and gives us an update. She's been the president and CEO of LawPro since 2008, and her information is invaluable to give us a picture of how our profession is doing. Kathleen?
Thank you. Well, thank you for yet again inviting me to come to your fall plenary session. And, you know, I usually make it a principle I will not speak following Dan, but, you know, I got tricked today. So, so here I am, and I hope you will not have a post-lunch letdown. 4 topics, fairly common with what we usually cover in the fall. Mid-year financial highlights, some claims information, our program updates for next year, and some other LawPro news. So let's start off with some financial results. Now the first row is of course the net premiums, and if you compare the 2016 to the 2017, and this is on a mid-year basis, you'll see they're going down. And you may immediately say, oh, for an insurance company, revenue going down, this is a bad thing. But in fact, this was all part of our plan when we reduced the base premium taking effect at January 1st of this year. So very much everything is in accord with plan. Investment income, you know, up. Net claims are up, but before you think that's necessarily indicative of more claims coming in fact, based on how we're doing some of our reserving for legal costs on the files, we may be inadvertently seeing a bump in our reserves to do with them. So that's something we're working on and isn't a matter for concern. So we're coming in at mid-year with $1 million net income, but the budget was to have a $2.2 million loss, all as part of this having lower base premium. And then our total comprehensive income, which is in fact a loss, that's where adjustments get made to do with our surplus or our capital, which is a lot of equities the money is invested in. And of course, last fall, our equity portfolio had what is known as the Trump bump, when all of a sudden we had these huge gains that no one would ever have predicted. And then in the course of this year, as the financial analysts and the stock market have started being a little bit less enamored with President Trump and starting to lose their belief in whether he can actually deliver everything he said he was going to, we started to see equities go back down. And of course, when equities go back down, that affects our shareholders' equity a little bit, by like a couple of $1 million. Well, what were we trying to do when we decreased the premiums at the beginning of this year? Well, we were trying to get our minimum capital test, getting it just right would be the theme. So the minimum capital test, that's that regulatory test that we have to meet, where every quarter we constantly be having to look at how much surplus or how much capital we have in the company, because the regulator, you know, asks questions like, well, what happened if you've miscalculated the premiums? What happens if you miscalculate the claims? You have to have extra money as an insurance company in case any of these bad things happen. And our preferred range for our minimum capital test, as set by the board, is 215 to 240%. And that means you would have $2.15 or $2.40, you know, in that range, for each dollar that the regulator said you should have. And, you know, we've been running a minimum capital test higher than the preferred range, so how we start to pull that down was by reducing base premium and starting to throw up some purposeful losses, you might say, for a couple of years. And so that's why we're looking for the right-sized premium, and neither too little nor too much. And if you figured out sort of the theme of Goldilocks and the Three Bears here, you'll start to get the picture. So now let's talk about what's happening with claims, always a topic of interest. So if you look at the 2 top rows on this graph, not surprising, you have both litigation and real estate up there. And that's very, very common that they're the 2 highest areas of claims. Combined, they're usually 70% of the claims reported and about 65% of our claims costs. Now, the red line, the very top one, is the litigation line. And if you look over towards the left side, you'll see in past years often, it used to be lower than real estate. And then you see this continued trend of litigation sort of going up and up and up over the years. This graph's another way to look at that. Over on the far left side is civil litigation, and this is showing costs over a number of years. And then it's the real estate group. And once again, they're higher than a lot of the other groups. So this is, once again, showing you that civil litigation line in recent years really pulling out ahead of the other areas of law. So we've certainly seen through 2006 to 2010, we used to get an average of about 708 civil litigation claim files a year. And then from 2011 to 2015, that's jumped quite significantly. Now we're up to about an average of 948 of those files per year. So that's a 34% growth. And that's vastly exceeding what we're seeing in the business generally. Generally at LawPro, we're seeing a growth of claims of about 7% for all other areas over that period of time. So 34% combined or compared to 7%, you can see why civil litigation would be catching our average or catching our eye. And even if you, so if you ask what's the annual cost of those claims, sort of per lawyer, per civil litigation lawyer, it's almost $6,000. And that's just cost of claims. That doesn't include administration of running the company or, you know, all the other kind of costs we have, just paying the claims. Well, that's way more than your average civil litigation practitioner is paying in premium and transaction levies. And certainly exceeds all other areas of law per practitioner. So that has led us to put out in our September magazine, have a very special focus on litigation claims and try to start getting people to understand what's happening in this area and what they can do about it. And I think that's very much a theme you'll see continuing into the communications for next year as well. So when we talk next year, of course, we just recently have launched the all our preparations and renewals have been ongoing for the 2018 program, and the insurance program magazine came out recently. Well, the good news is, in terms of base premium, there is no change. It's staying the same for next year at $2,950 per insured. However, there's a lot of other changes going on in the program for 2018 that relate to risk rating. And of course, risk rating is one of the core ways that we promote fairness among the insureds who are in the program. And when they had that, the Law Society had that famous insurance task force report done in the mid-1990s when the program was quite truly in crisis, there was a very strong endorsement of how the program had to move to be a more risk-rated system here in Ontario. And that program or that task force report is still very much the mandate under which we operate the program. And so when, you know, we can talk risk rating at a theoretical level, but in the practical sense, it means the lower risk areas, you know, pay less or get discounts, and the higher risk areas pay transaction levies or claims history levy surcharges for those who've had claims, etc. So what are some examples of risk rating? Well, for instance, if you're exclusively criminal or exclusively immigration, you get a 50% premium reduction in your base premium right off the bat. There's a reduction for new calls where they phase in over a number of years before they pay full base premium. And then on the flip side, the raising more money side, there are the transaction levies for real estate and civil litigation. So we got a lot of tools in this toolkit, if you know what I mean. But it's all intended to, at a high level, sort of directionally, trying to make it more so The people who are the better risks get the benefit of that. The people who aren't such good risks are having to pay extra. But it will never be a perfect arithmetical formula. It's more about direction and weighting. Because if it was perfect arithmetic, it wouldn't be insurance anymore. There'd be no loss spreading. So what is one of the areas where risk rating is making things better for people this year? Well, lawyers in part-time practice get a 50% discount off base premium. And there's a definition of how you qualify for part-time practice discount. And partly it relates to you have to work less than 20 hours per week, and you can't exceed a certain annual billing limit. Well, for many years, that annual billing limit was $75,000, but for 2018, we're raising it to $90,000 because we feel that more accurately, sort of on an inflation-adjusted basis, back to when the last time we adjusted it, that's more appropriate at this time. Now, another aspect of risk rating is the innocent partner or innocent party levies. And this is a coverage that protects the members of the firm if one of their members is dishonest. So if you're the honest member in the firm and somebody else is stealing money from a client, you would have vicarious liability, right, for that loss. So there is innocent partner coverage in the program that is mandatory if you have partners, co-shareholders, et cetera. And the cost of that is going to be reduced by half. So it's going down to $125. And to a certain extent, this is sort of the yin and the yang with the comp fund at the Law Society, right? Because if it's a sole practitioner who is dishonest or who steals money, they don't have any partners. It would go through comp fund at the Law Society. But in our case, if there are partners, those partners would put the claim into LawPro, and we'd be the first people looking at it ahead of comp fund. So to some extent, those of you who've been paying attention to what the Law Society is doing with its fees for next year, its fees are going up, partly because of it needing money for comp fund, while our fees in the corresponding area are coming down. They're seeing the claims, we're not. Then next, another good news story from a risk rating perspective is we've been able to do something good in the family law area. So family law is responsible for less than 15% of our gross incurred claims costs and for 18% of the claims by count. And we've been doing more analysis in this area, and we're now able to say that the family law bar is actually covering their share of the premium appropriately without having to pay transaction levies. So, in fact, the transaction levies are coming off of the family law files. So that's an area where the litigation transaction levy, if you want to call it that, is getting narrower. And it was also interesting. A lot of work was done on how we code family law files. And one of the things that extra coding work demonstrated is that it isn't the litigation part of the work that even causes the family law lawyers to have the claims that they have. So whereas in the civil litigation files, it's a lot of the process stuff related to the handling of the litigation that throws up the claims, missing limitation periods, et cetera. In family law, it tends to be much more substantive law issues. So there wasn't really a line of sight even from imposing a transaction levy on that file to what might throw up the loss under that file, if you see what I mean. So in that sense, it wasn't really driving necessarily more careful behavior. Anyhow, we are very happy that that we are able to waive that levy for the family law files, and certainly in terms of the Attorney General and the policy staff in the Attorney General's office, this was a very popular move on their part. They are so desperate to see something good happen in the area of access to justice and family law files, et cetera, that they considered this to be a wonderful thing that we could do it. Having said that, I was just saying earlier, we have had very little feedback from the bar that I'm aware of on this, so I think maybe a lot of family law lawyers really haven't figured it out yet. But hopefully they will feel good about it next year when they're not paying transaction levies. Now, on to the less happy news. Risk rating doesn't only involve premium decreases. Sometimes it also has to involve increases. And, so obviously I went through the stats with you for the civil litigation area, and there was just no way we could avoid it, that we knew we had to increase the transaction levy on the civil litigation files. And so in fact, as of 2018, those levies are going to $100 each. Now, the trigger for when they will be due is the same, except you won't have to pay them on family law files, and you still get the same exclusions. It doesn't apply to small claims court, residential landlord and tenant, or certain legal aid work, certain other agency work. And it's interesting. Some people may say, well, when you ding the real estate bar a number of years ago, you only went to $65. Why do we have to go to $100 for civil litigation? But in fact, there's fewer litigation levies paid per year than there is real estate levies. So each one of those files has more way to make up, so to speak, in paying its fair share. And just to give you a graphic representation of it, the blue bars are the claims and expenses in the civil litigation area. So we're assuming here around $38 million a year. The purple on the left-hand side shows what we would get if we were only charging premiums, so only charging base premiums to the civil litigation practitioners, and we'd come up with about $22 million. When you put the transaction levies on, over on the far side, the purple bar goes up to $29 million. But even there, there's a $9 million shortfall still. So as I say, risk rating is directional. It isn't sort of dollar for dollar. This increase is making things better, but isn't necessarily solving the whole problem for all time. That's why there is still so much work to be done in terms of risk management. So what else is happening at LawPro? Well, I did mention the Attorney General's office. And, one of the things in our mandate at LawPro is to maintain very good relations with Queen's Park. And we do that in a way that we not only, sort of promote ourselves and our own relationships with them, but really try to find ways to make them better understand about lawyers and what lawyers do and issues that we're interested in. So, we've talked in the past a number of years ago about our initiative up in the far corner there, A Foot in the Door, where we helped develop materials that can be used in high school real estate or in high school law courses to teach students about real estate and have them practice how you would negotiate to buy a home or how you would go apply for a mortgage, etc. Well, the information in that was considered very popular with the MPPs and their staff. So we ended up developing a whole range of brochures that I see Ray LeClaire is here and Dan too, their department worked on. And these brochures have gone out to all the MPP offices in Ontario because they say people will come into their offices and ask about real estate problems that they've got, and they're desperate to have something to hand them, say, oh, read this, this may help. And of course, because we drafted these, wherever we can, there's the little, you should talk to your lawyer about this, and this is how you find a lawyer, so if someone's having a problem as a tenant, or if they're having a human rights problem, etc. It's all this constant subtle reinforcement of how important the role of the lawyer is. And we actually were able to host a breakfast at Queen's Park to launch the brochures, and were recognized in the House that day, which was quite an honor for us in terms of our work to support the financial and legal literacy of the Ontario public. Now, our other way recently that we have been trying to support public awareness of what lawyers do and insurance issues, etc., are our public awareness videos. And so we're trying to do more multimedia, not just all text-based work. And in particular, up at the top, we have a video that's called a Streeter video that I thought we might watch for a few minutes that I think is a great example of how creative you have to be in terms of trying to reach out and engage public interest these days. So if we could run that.
What do Canadian homeowners know about title insurance? Let's find out. What is the best thing about owning a home?
The best thing about owning a home is the fact that you've invested in your future.
Freedom. That you don't have to pay rent.
When have you regretted being a homeowner?
Signing the mortgage.
Oh, when things fall apart, you have to fix them.
When I had to pay bills.
When I had crappy neighbors.
What types of insurance do you have for your home?
I don't even know. My husband does that.
Like the most extended insurance.
Fire theft, all of those bells and whistles.
What is title insurance?
I've no clue.
My lawyers told me about it when I was signing up, and it's basically to protect the title.
So you're covered if anyone does fraudulent acts on your property.
Title insurance secures the transaction when you purchase a new home or a resale house.
Title is your ownership of your home. Title insurance is an insurance policy that protects you against problems with your title. How is title insurance different than home insurance?
Well, I guess home insurance would cover the building.
Fire theft damage that may occur in a home. Title insurance is about the ownership of the home and making sure that you have what you paid for.
Title problems could include buildings outside the property line. How can your title be stolen or mortgaged without your knowledge?
I wish I knew.
Identity theft.
A TitlePLUS policy provides coverage for title fraud that may have occurred prior to your purchase or if your property becomes a target at a later date. Would you be covered if the previous owner didn't pay their property tax bills?
I don't think I would be.
I'm gonna say yes. I'm actually not too sure what my insurance covers.
A TitlePLUS policy may provide coverage for property tax bills which the seller should have paid but didn't. How often do you pay premiums for title insurance?
Monthly? Just at the time, the initial time when you buy the home.
Maybe annually?
I don't know. Maybe I don't even have title insurance. I have no idea.
Title insurance is usually purchased when you buy a home. Unlike other types of insurance, the premium for a TitlePLUS policy is paid only once for as long as you own the home. How does buying title insurance save you money?
I'm not sure if it does.
Paid the cost down the line.
Safeguards you against any probable loss which may arise out of the bad title.
It reduces your costs because some searches and a survey may not be needed. To learn more about TitlePLUS title insurance, contact your real estate lawyer.
And so, believe it or not, those are real interviews. People will stop on the street if you ask them to and let you tape them, and then they'll sign a waiver that allows you to include them in your video. I always find that quite amazing. But anyhow, that's how the answers were obtained. And then down at the bottom there's another one of information about title insurance. But once again, references to lawyer in there. Everywhere you can get that word in. That's an important part of the initiative. And then, of course, just as always, TitlePLUS, I think we mentioned it's its 20th anniversary this year. And those of you who follow real estate news might have heard they've, increased limits, changes in the search requirements, and changes to the rural property endorsement. Now, something that our Claims Prevention and Stakeholder Relations Department is always very interested in you remembering about is how we do the claims fact sheets that are area of law specific, so covering real estate claims or civil litigation or family law, etc. And we've certainly talked about them before here, but if you're out giving any presentations or coordinating people to sit on panels or what have you, please don't forget about them because they can give you great information that's very specific to an area of law that you can easily implement in any sort of presentation. And they are available on the practicepro.ca website. And for those of you who might not have noticed this yet, the website was updated this year. It's been 20 years since the initial launch of the practicepro.ca website. We're now up to, pushing 350,000 visitors a year. 362,000 downloads of materials per year, for instance. So it continues to be a very important resource to the bar. And it was time for some updates. So you'll see that the old LawPro magazines that are still on the site have a much more web-friendly format now. And you have all your little social media buttons on there. So if you want to tweet something or post it to LinkedIn, it's very easy. It's probably a bit more intuitive design, you would say, in terms of finding things, and very easy to search by area of law or risk management topics. So that was a huge job for CPSR, but we're really, really pleased with how it came out. And then finally, a bit of news for those of you who haven't heard. I will actually be retiring next year. So, it's been an incredible journey, and you've always been so welcoming to me here and letting me come and make presentations. And in fact, this may well be the last professional presentation in my career. So I'm very happy to have been here with you for it. And I will very much be watching out for your future endeavors, and just wish you all the best in the important work that you do to support the Ontario Bar and all of our clients. Thank you.
Wow, I hadn't heard that, Kathleen. Congratulations on your retirement. I'm kind of sorry that we asked you to cut your last presentation short because we were running late. That's really so sorry about that. But thank you very much for all the time and effort that you've spent with us. And I hope that our paths do cross again. So thanks very much.
Thank you.